Did you see anything or any commotion from where the gunshot came from?
No, in fact, initially I thought it was a prank. I didn't know it was real. And then we saw police officers taking it seriously, hands on their weapons, and realized what had happened.
Just describe for me sort of what you saw unfold afterward. And I know that, there's certainly, this has an emotional impact for you too, having witnessed a homicide, but also it's just, you have reporter mode and you have to sort of cover this.
Right.
Okay.
It was interesting. I was standing in the
grass.
I dropped down with everyone else. I actually have grass stains on my knees. People were running, stepping on each other. I was stepped on. There was a mother behind me who yelled out, "Where's my son?" Yeah, a lot going on.
Good afternoon, ladies and
The news
gentlemen.
conference is beginning and we'll go to it.
Thank you for being here. At this press conference, we will first hear from Utah Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bo Mason. Then we'll hear from the FBI Special Agent in Charge, Robert Bowles. We'll then hear from Utah Valley University Vice President Val Peterson, who's been in touch with President Jimenez. And then we'll hear from Governor Cox. I'll turn the time over to Commissioner Mason.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And we are coming back on the air with breaking news right now. Officials in Utah are holding a news conference on the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, who was killed while giving a presentation at Utah Valley University. We've just learned from the FBI Director Kash Patel, posting this on X, that the suspect in that assassination is now in custody. We're monitoring this news conference. We're going to bring it to you as soon as it starts. It looks like they've started to speak. Let's listen in.
Where he later passed. The Utah Department of Public Safety will be co-leading this criminal investigation to find this killer, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are working in unison with the County Sheriff's Office, the local police department, and the University Police Department, all of which have been very cooperative and fully engaged in this process. Shortly after the shooting, we did have a suspect in custody, George Zinn, but he was released from custody after we identified that he did not match the shooting suspect and was not an accurate person of interest. However, he has been booked into the county jail by Utah Valley University Police Department for obstruction of justice. We do still have an active investigation for the person of interest. This incident occurred with a large crowd around. There was one shot fired and one victim. While the suspect is at large, we believe this was a targeted attack towards one individual. This is a tragic moment in our state and in our country. As we heal, we encourage everyone who is struggling with news of the incident to call 988, our state mental health crisis line. In addition to that, our partners with the FBI will also be discussing other ways we can communicate through the public for tips and other information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. Our thoughts are also with the people who witnessed this traumatic event. We know that what you experienced was very difficult. Our thoughts are with you as well. As soon as we heard about the shooting, special agents and personnel from the Salt Lake field office responded immediately. We have full resources devoted to this investigation, including tactical, operational, investigative, and intelligence. To be clear, the FBI will fully support and co-lead this investigation alongside with our partners. We are working on setting up a digital media tip line, and as soon as it's established, we'll get that information out to everyone. I know there's a lot of questions. This is very much an active case, and this investigation is in its early stages. We are following all the leads and all the evidence. If anyone has any information, please report it to the FBI or local law enforcement. Thank you.
On behalf of President Jimenez, who we've been communicating with, and she's on her way back right now, I say that on behalf of Utah Valley University, we are shocked and saddened by the tragic passing of Charlie Kirk. We express our sincere condolences to the Kirk family. We grieve with our students, faculty, and staff who bore witness to this unspeakable tragedy. He was invited by the student group Turning Point USA to speak on our campus. We firmly believe that UVU is a place to share ideas and to debate openly and respectfully. Any attempt to infringe on those rights has no place here. We do not condone any form of violence at UVU and seek to make our campus a safe place for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this dark and tragic occasion. I want to thank our law enforcement officers who are leading this investigation, starting with Chief Long and his response here with the UVU Police Department. We're grateful for your leadership and your team. And again, to the speakers that you've just heard from who are co-leading this investigation. I also want to recognize Sheriff Mike Smith, who has been an invaluable partner as this investigation moves forward. I've been in touch with President Trump, with FBI Director Kash Patel. We are completely aligned with our state and federal partners as we work through this case. Now, this is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. We are celebrating 250 years of the founding of this great nation. That founding document, the Declaration of Independence, that this great experiment on which we embarked together 250 years ago, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. The first one of those is life. And today, a life was taken. Charlie Kirk was first and foremost a husband and a dad to two young children. He was also very much politically involved, and that's why he was here on campus. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. Historically, our university campuses in this nation and here in the state of Utah have been the place where truth and ideas are formulated and debated. And that's what he does. He comes on college campuses and he debates. That is foundational to the formation of our country, to our most basic constitutional rights. And when someone takes the life of a person because of their ideas or their ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened. Now, we have a person of interest in custody. The investigation is ongoing. But I want to make it crystal clear right now, to whoever did this, we will find you. We will try you. And we will hold you accountable to the furthest extent of the law. And I just want to remind people that we still have the death penalty here in the state of Utah. Our nation is broken. We've had political assassinations recently in Minnesota. We had an attempted assassination on the governor of Pennsylvania. And we had an attempted assassination on a presidential candidate and former president of the United States, and now current president of the United States. Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken. We mourn with his wife, his children, his family, his friends. We mourn as a nation. If anyone in the sound of my voice celebrated even a little bit at the news of this shooting, I would beg you to look in the mirror and to see if you can find a better angel in there somewhere. I don't care what his politics are. I care that he was an American. We desperately need our country. We desperately need leaders in our country. But more than the leaders, we just need every single person in this country to think about where we are and where we want to be. To ask ourselves, is this it? Is this what 250 years has wrought on us? I pray that that's not the case. I pray that those who hated what Charlie Kirk stood for will put down their social media and their pens and pray for his family, and that all of us will try to find a way to stop hating our fellow Americans. With that, we're happy to take a few questions.
The FBI director is posting that a suspect is in custody. I would just like clarification. Do you or do you not have a suspected shooter in custody?
We have a person of interest in custody that is being interviewed right now. We do.
That is not George Zinn.
That is not George Zinn. Okay. That is correct.
Are you still searching or looking for another shooter or anybody else related to this?
Yes, we are actively looking for anyone and everyone who has any possible information relating to this shooting.
Can you tell us details about the suspect being taken into custody? Where? How long ago?
We cannot at this point, but we will get you that information when we can.
Is there believed to be a second individual involved in the shooting?
At this point, there is no information that would lead us to believe that there is a second person involved.
Can you guys talk about the possible shooting?
Do you want to talk about what we know there? Yeah.
The only information we have on the suspect, the possible shooter, is taken from closed-circuit TV here on campus. We do have that. We're analyzing it, but it is security camera footage, so you can kind of guess what the quality of that is. But we do know dressed in all dark clothing, but we don't have much better description other than that.
Where do you believe the shot came from?
The shot came from here on campus, from a location at a fair, potentially from a roof, yes. A longer distance shot from a roof.
So to clarify, with the security camera footage you have and the person of interest that's in custody, does that match up?
That's what we're trying to decipher right now.
So did FBI or DHS have anything on the threat board this morning?
I can't speak to that.
I'll just say that the investigation's ongoing, and as soon as we have further information, we will be sure to release it.
Any indications of foreign intelligence involvement?
As of now, I can't comment on any of that.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the security of the event itself? Who was there security-wise, and what happens on these kind of events?
Chief Long.
So my name is Jeff Long. I'm the police chief here at UVU, and I'll tell you right now, we are devastated. We're a small police department. We have a very large campus. We have over 40,000 students, and we love our students. We love our visitors, and we're devastated by what happened today. This is the police chief's nightmare. I'm very saddened for the Kirk family. I know his wife and parents found out about this. Obviously he's away from home. He's here in Utah. They find out by a police officer that visits their home. That's tragic. Nobody wants that. But I can tell you about our venue today. This was an open venue. This was outside. We did have 6 officers working that event. We had probably over 3,000 people that were in attendance. It sat down in kind of a bowl area here on the central campus. We have a waterfall area, and so he was kind of in a lower area, surrounded by buildings. We had some plainclothes police officers that were in the crowd as well. We train for these things, and you think you have things covered, and these things, unfortunately, they happen. You try to get your bases covered, and unfortunately today we didn't. And because of that, we had this tragic incident. So we did have officers there. We had Charlie Kirk's team. He has a security team that travels with him, and they were here with him when he was shot.
Was the gun recovered?
I'm sorry, Steve?
Was the weapon recovered?
At this point, I can't disclose that.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, there was a question being asked about mass shootings. Was that person apprehended? And do you know who asked that question?
Say the question again. I don't know if I understand what you're saying.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, he was answering a question about mass shootings specifically. Was that person apprehended? And do you know who asked that question?
I do not. We do not have that at this moment.
What kind of weapon was used?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for just one more question, so thank you.
Yeah, a question for the chief as well. Was it your team or Kirk's team or a combination of both that kind of set the security protocol for the event?
So we work together. He has his team, and they do this all over the country. We all know that. This is not uncommon for them. They're very comfortable on campuses, and I was coordinating with his lead security guy, and so we were working together.
Was this a sharpshooter type shot?
Ladies and gentlemen, those are all the questions that will be answered today. Again, thank you for covering this. We will be updating you as soon as we have additional information through normal channels, working with law enforcement. Again, our deepest condolences to the Kirk family and to the students who were there today. I would just ask everyone everywhere to please pray for their family and to pray for our country. We need it now more than ever. Thank you.
All right, we've just been listening to Utah officials, including Governor Spencer Cox, talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. A bit of confusion there for many of us covering this and the press as well that was gathered, because the head of the FBI director, Kash Patel, put out a post on X just before this news conference saying that the subject of the shooting, I'm going to read it here, the subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Now, it was unclear from the news conference who exactly was in custody, but later the governor saying there was a person of interest in custody, and later a police officer saying that they're trying to sort of connect the dots right now. I do want to bring in our national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter. Tom, look, things are very fluid. This just happened a few hours ago. It was an assassination from long range. It was planned out from what we've heard. There was a suspect in dark clothing, they believe, seen on closed-circuit TV at Utah Valley University. The question now is, it seemed like the FBI director went a little further than officials in Utah were comfortable with. Do you think this is an issue of semantics, or they have the man they were looking for?
Yeah, it's an issue of semantics, Tom. And according to our colleague Mike Cosner, who is talking to the top of the FBI tonight, there is growing confidence that the individual identified by officials in Utah as a person of interest that they now have in custody is, in fact, the person they believe could be the shooter in this. So to just break down the semantics briefly, sometimes they don't want to call somebody a suspect for certain legal reasons in their ability to question and their ability to talk to that person, so that could be at play here. In addition to that, they want to make sure that they can match up the evidence that they've recovered and seen so far to this person before officially calling them a suspect. Right, but right now they have a real good feeling that the person they think is responsible for this assassination, they do have in fact in custody.
The governor's saying they're going to look for anybody that may be connected to the shooting, but they don't believe that there was a second person involved in the shooting, that the shooter likely was on the roof of the building about 200 yards away from where Charlie Kirk was speaking, long-range rifle, able to hit Charlie Kirk somewhere in the neck or the chest, killing him in front of a crowd of thousands that had gathered at this university there in Utah. I guess my next question to you is, they were talking about the security there. The police officer that was in charge, I think it was the chief of police there, saying they had numerous officers, clearly in hindsight, not enough, but also the person who had planned this out maybe had thought a little more than others had there, and was intent on killing Charlie Kirk even from very far away.
I mean, there becomes a point for these university officials, for people at these high-profile institutions. I mean, do we just go to Secret Service protection for every single major event? Right. Because that's the type of thing that you're seeing. And by the way, we still had 2 attempted assassinations on then candidate Donald Trump, now President Donald Trump, and he did have Secret Service protection, as we well know. If this individual was some measurements almost 500 feet, some 200 yards away with a semi-automatic rifle. That is not a particularly difficult shot for somebody that would have planned for this, would have had access to the weapon to be able to conduct what they were able to conduct today.
We should clear up something, too, that officials cleared up as well. There was a lot of video and initial report that the suspect was in custody early on, and there was social media video of an elderly man who had been handcuffed. Police now saying that person has been arrested. They are not connected to the shooting, at least not right now, but they were arrested for obstruction of justice.
Yes, that's George Zinn. This is an individual, according to publicly available documents and records, and what officials said at the press conference is somebody who they have had interactions with before, a well-known local protester. But again, we want to be clear, there's no indication this individual had anything to do with what is now being described by officials there as a political assassination. What that person's role is, whether or not they'll ultimately go through the trial process, we'll see. Presumably they'll profess their innocence as well.
I want to bring in our Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, we obviously, and we will not lose sight of what happened here, a political assassination in Utah on a college campus. The governor of Utah there, Spencer Cox, speaking passionately about Charlie Kirk, getting emotional and saying how this assassin had taken the life of a young father, a husband, someone who's passionate about politics and exercising his freedom of speech, something that all Americans deserve and we have the right to, and talking about how ugly politics has gotten, and really that we're at a point we haven't been in decades, really, since maybe the 1960s, but it's gotten a bit out of control, citing what's happened in Minnesota with those Democratic lawmakers, with the governor of Pennsylvania, and then, of course, what happened to President Trump, inches away of being killed. Corey Compatoria, a supporter of the president, though, losing his life just behind the president in that Butler, Pennsylvania rally, and then a second attempt on President Trump's life as well.
We are in this period where there is acting out toward political figures. We don't yet know what a motive is, if this was politically motivated or if this was a suspect who may have been drawn to the fact that this was a large-scale event. We have seen that in other instances of national violence where sometimes mental illness is a factor, sometimes it is attention-seeking, and sometimes there can be a political motive, an anger about the views of a subject of the shooting. And we've seen that over many different cases with different dimensions. So those are some of the questions that will be so critical now. So an individual in custody, that person, they will try to gain information, and then they also have the ability then, once they've identified a suspect, to then do all of the other modern work, which is looking at their electronics, looking at their communications, looking at things as basic as the vehicle the person may have used. Was there any evidence there? All of those pieces. We live in a world now where cameras seem to be everywhere, both fixed surveillance and security cameras, as well as handheld phones and people recording an event. And certainly there were many different angles of this. What can that tell officials about this? Also learning more about the weapon. When was it purchased? What type of weapon? All of those questions are still to be determined. That nitty-gritty work will go on, but separately, in a parallel track, is the emotional sort of cascade of what happened here. And Governor Cox certainly tried to put that back into human terms by talking about Charlie Kirk, not as the political activist that he was, not as the person who was inspiring to many young conservatives and confounding to some on the political left, but as a young married father with two small children, and the entire Kirk family now suffering this just irreplaceable loss of a husband and father. So many dimensions to this, Tom, and the investigation is just one piece of it, the political fallout another. We've seen broad condemnation from across the political spectrum, including not only the current president, who knew Charlie Kirk as a friend, but also former presidents like Joe Biden and Barack Obama, who have commented about no place for political violence. So there is a reckoning always that follows these heartbreaking and tragic events about the role of guns in our society, the role of political discourse, and when people get animated and engaged, what are the lines that people must stay within? And that is part of the debate in and of itself. Tom?
Kelly, we thank you. I do want to bring in Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker. Kristen, this is a sad day for the country. And I know just like you have, I've been hearing from a lot of Republican sources, people who knew Charlie Kirk, who they themselves are incredibly sad. This was a tragedy. This was somebody who had worked very hard for a political party he believed in, for a movement he believed in. It was his life, right? He was a rising star in Republican politics. And he worked so closely with so many Republican elected officials. And even though he did not have an office, even though he did not run for office, he was not elected, he was in so many ways a leader in that party. He had a huge platform, and because of that, he was a target for someone, a deranged individual who may now be in custody. So, Kristen, I want to ask you, the conversations you're having with your Republican sources along the same lines?
Tom, I think you captured it really well. And the fact that in talking to a White House official, it was described to me that everyone there is just in a state of shock because they said everyone has close ties to Charlie Kirk at that White House. And just to zoom out a little bit, let's talk a little bit about who Charlie Kirk was. He founded Turning Point USA. Tom, he was just 18 years old. It's really extraordinary to think about. He really energized young voters. He wanted to bring them into the political discourse. He wanted them to enjoy talking about politics, and he has been a supporter of President Trump since the very beginning. 2016 helped to really energize young voters to go to the polls for his first election, and then in this latest race played a pivotal role as well, Tom, and that is why you are hearing from so many Republicans who are just in a state of shock and devastated, but Democrats too. Everyone, Tom, saying this has to end. But I think the question is, how can it end, and what, if anything, can lawmakers do to bring this political violence to an end? You have ticked through all of the different examples. I was struck when Governor Cox said, "Our nation is broken." Really powerful, Tom.
Yeah, and on that point, I want to bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson, who's been covering this with us, and our team here moment by moment. Hallie, I do want to ask you, you wonder, you know, we covered Butler, what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. We covered what happened in Minnesota, what happened with the Pennsylvania governor. We cover all these events, and the news cycle moves fast. But I just feel that we're getting to a point now where this is going to change things, and you wonder how other people like Charlie Kirk on the right, on the left, people in the center, people who are passionate about politics, and then elected officials themselves, how are they going to go out there in the public? How are they going to campaign? You know, Tom Winchell brought up a great point. The Secret Service can't protect everybody. How exactly are politics going to move forward in this country?
And can I add to that, Tom, too, in addition to these, I think, thoughtful and important questions, what about people who are not elected? What about these, call them influencers, call them whatever you want, who are in the public sphere, who have a huge outsized voice among people who of all various political persuasions, who are now starting to express real fear, concern about what happens to them, just like Charlie Kirk was not elected. He is not somebody who was a lawmaker who would have been privy to some of these protections here, Tom. And I think in addition to the horror and the shock and the anger, there is also a degree of fear as well about where we're going, about what is happening here at this moment. And I think I was struck by what you heard from Governor Cox there, who talked about what Charlie Kirk was doing in Utah in the first place. As you well know from these events, he went out, he would talk to people, he would have disagreements, he would have debates. That was the point. The discussion and the debate was the point. That is the free speech, which is one of the ideals that this country is founded on. And Governor Cox said that when somebody takes the life of a person because of their ideas or ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened. I think you are seeing a reaction already tonight here in Washington and beyond related to the questions that you're asking. And in some corners, a call to action as the shock is still there, and as so many, as we said, across the political spectrum are grappling with that. What is the call to action going to be? And I think to a degree that conversation is one that will be had in the days to come here in Washington at the Capitol and at the White House. But at this moment, I think there is a lot of, one word that I've heard from talking to eyewitnesses even again and again, processing what has just happened. Tom.
And Hallie, if you can also speak to the point, I mean, Charlie Kirk's influence, his reach, his platform, the President of the United States told the country that this man had died. That's how close he was to the president.
That's right.
And that's how big of a role he had, at least within the president's movement.
That's right, and that is, listen, that is unusual to hear the first word of somebody's death come from the sitting president of the United States. And to your point, it speaks of the role that Charlie Kirk had. You know, his team said that every month he reached something like 100 million people with his social media reach online. He had a show. He would do these campus tours. He was a voice not just among young conservatives, but inside the powers and the halls of power here in Washington, close with the Trump family, as we've been talking about, friends with them, Tom, not just somebody who you would call, you know, a staffer or an advisor or an aide or an outside advisor. He was personally close with some of these folks, including, for example, Vice President J.D. Vance. He fought for the Trump-Vance movement in this election. He was the youngest speaker at the RNC in 2016. He's been around politics for many years. And so the degree, I think, to which official Washington is reeling tonight, I think is very real, Tom.
All right, Hallie, stand by for us. We thank you for that. I want to bring in Tom Winter again. Tom, let's get our viewers caught up here because we know that somebody is now in custody. The FBI director calling him a subject. The Utah governor calling him a person of interest, but investigators and law enforcement believe they have the man who allegedly assassinated Charlie Kirk.
That's right, Tom. There's growing confidence tonight that the individual that Utah officials have described as a person of interest, that the FBI director in his ex-social media posts described as a suspect, is in fact the person that they've been looking for and is the person responsible for this political assassination. The FBI Salt Lake City field office, which will work with the Utah officials in this investigation, telling people that if they have any videos, and you know, Tom, you and I have seen probably, what, a dozen, 2 dozen videos of this today. If you have any videos, any digital evidence, tips.fbi.gov, or to reach out to your local field office with any sort of information about this. We've been stopping these videos because obviously we don't want to show the death of somebody. Right. That's generally our policy here, obviously. But yes, they're looking for more information, and there's growing confidence in this. It did strike me at the press conference, they were asked if there was any sort of a foreign connection, and the official that answered said no comment. Was that no comment because they just didn't know yet, or that's an avenue that they're investigating? Again, all questions that we have and question investigators.
And it's still very early. They also revealed a little bit of the evidence they had, or at least the clues they're looking at. Closed-circuit television, the suspect allegedly dressed in all black. Have they mentioned the weapon yet? Have they mentioned any casings yet? Are they not there yet, or at least not ready to reveal that to the public? Maybe they don't.
Not information we have yet, but just in speaking with firearms experts and listening to our own Jim Kavanaugh, our expert, this would have had to have been a long gun at that range to
200
hit
yards.
Somebody with a handgun would have been very difficult. So some sort of a long gun, either a rifle or a semi-automatic rifle that somebody would have used to be able to hit Charlie Kirk.
And it's chilling how similar this is to Butler in the sense that it was somebody on a roof, shooting down from a roof at a public event, someone speaking, and then just taking them out from that vantage point.
Yeah, let's put ourselves in the shoes of that chief of police today. He's got an event on campus. Charlie Kirk appeared to have some security with him. He has some officers that are there. And so now, Tom, you're in a situation where you're going to host these events on campus. And these days, given how, our political environment, everybody's kind of a lightning rod, as Hallie was referring to, as Kelly was referring to. So now you've got to have, 360-degree protection. You've got to have people that are up high in certain areas. It just underscores the challenge of it. It may also underscore the planning that this individual could have taken to carry this incident out, Tom.
The governor calling this a political assassination, but we still don't have a clear motive. It is very early. But what they are signifying is that Charlie Kirk was a political figure. He has since been killed. And if this is the man they have in custody, this is the assassin, they will try to figure out why he targeted Charlie Kirk.
Right. And they alluded to at the press conference that they're obviously trying to have some sort of an interview, and in the process of trying to talk to this individual. They'll look at that. They'll look at their phones and laptops. Everybody knows that now. That's your own personal diary and record keeper, and see if this individual has any sort of writings and whatever statements they might make to law enforcement could be helpful in their investigation. And that could also potentially trip federal charges beyond the state murder charge, you would presume.
And credit to them that they worked pretty fast. And if this is the man, they got him quickly.
Yeah, I mean, within 6 hours, yes. Yeah. Within 4 or 5 hours, actually.
Okay. Tom Winter, we thank you for that. That's going to conclude this NBC News special report, and we'll have much more ahead on Nightly News in just moments. I'm Tom Llamas. We thank you so much for watching this special report.
And for folks who are tuning in here on WCNC Plus, we are now picking up coverage here on Live Impact News. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Vanessa Rufus. Of course, a lot of developments that we've learned in the last several minutes from authorities as they gave that briefing. And you saw, of course, the breakdown there from the team over at Nightly News. On the other side of this quick break, in just about 2 minutes, we'll be back speaking with a young Republicans group. Of course, as we've been speaking on how Mr. Kirk had energized many young voters and really empowered young people in some circles to speak their mind about politics. So we're going to talk with a group from North Carolina about their reaction to the news today. Back in 2 minutes. Thanks so much for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We continue our coverage today of the shooting, and as we've heard described in recent moments, political assassination, according to the governor of Utah, of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. We've just gotten some information, of course, after kind of a convoluted update, hearing essentially authorities believe that they have a person of interest in connection to this shooting who they are questioning or hearing, and this is a separate person than the person that we saw detained in some video, a man who was inevitably booked for obstruction of justice, so unrelated to the shooting from what we're hearing at this hour. As we mentioned before we took this break, we are hearing so many reactions across the country, and that includes from young conservative groups. We've got Preston Hill joining us with UNC College Republicans. Preston, thank you so much for making some time for us tonight. Just wanted to kind of get your take. How are you feeling tonight? What is the dialogue happening right now amongst you and your organization members?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I would say we're all still pretty much in shock. We still don't know, how to process this. We're still keeping up with the updates, and it's only been a few hours to think about this. When I heard the news, I was on a bus on the way to my Wednesday class, and at that point, I had just read that he had been shot and was taken to the hospital. And so, I went to my next class, really not knowing what was going on. And so everybody was just kind of panicking, trying to gather information and figure out, is he okay? Did they get the shooter? People were just looking for answers. And so we were all just shocked and horrified at what happened. And I think regardless of politics, if you're a Republican, a Democrat, liberal, or a conservative, that we should condemn these acts of violence and against somebody who, Charlie Kirk, this man, I'd met him before. He was, a father, a husband, and all he wanted to do was just to talk to people on campus and give them a platform, and just, engage in dialogue with people. And so, yeah, I want to give my thoughts and prayers to his family and all the people who were there to witness that horrible event.
Now, Preston, you just mentioned that you had met him previously. Can you tell us about that encounter, and when was that, and where did that happen? And did he speak to you? Did you speak with him?
Sure, yeah. So he came to UNC Chapel Hill last October, right before the election, on one of his tours. And so because I'm involved in Turning Point USA, I was able to meet him beforehand, just talk to him, shake his hand, and actually get to meet this guy who has impacted the lives of millions of people. And so, yeah, he was just there doing one of his normal events. It was indoors, very similar to the type of event that he was doing today, where students were just coming up and talking to him, asking him questions, and engaging in dialogue. And yeah, so that was the last time that I saw him, and it was I would say it was very humanizing to have actually met this person, talked to this person, and then read what happened today. It was just heartbreaking.
Now, I mean, of course, we know that Mr. Kirk, with the platform that he had and how vocal he was on so many different topics, I mean, I feel like he sparked a big emotional response from folks, whether folks agreed or disagreed with whatever he was talking about. And I'm just kind of curious your take on, his impact on people. What was the allure of Charlie Kirk for you? Why was he such an important figure to you?
Well, he was an important figure to me because from when I got into politics, 5 or 6 years ago, he was one of the first people who I remember listening to, doing these kind of open mic, bring your questions and he'll answer them on the spot kind of encounters and debate platforms. That was something that drew myself and millions of other Gen Z individuals to him. And his impact on students, his impact on college campuses, it's felt all around the country. And even with what happened today, we want to carry on his legacy and make sure that all this work that he has put into this organization for the last decade carries on, and that his message is still spread across the country, and that we will make sure that we honor him in doing that.
As far as events or gatherings or, any opportunities that you and your group will be putting together, is there anything that's on the schedule yet? I know it's so early, but is there anything that you're planning as far as, remembrances or honoring, or as you mentioned, efforts to try to carry out what he believed in?
Sure. I don't want to comment too much on that, just because we've gotten some word from the Turning Point USA headquarters as to what to do with that. But Turning Point USA is not going away by any means. We're all mourning together over this tragic, heartbreaking loss that happened. But we're going to make sure that Turning Point USA is here to stay and to continue honoring and going with Charlie's legacy that he left behind.
Now, you alluded to this just a few moments ago, the fact that, whether folks are liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, whatever their political leanings are, this is something that folks are denouncing outright. And we've heard, folks in the political realm, both sides of the aisle weighing in today saying political violence has to stop. This is too much. I'm just, curious to hear your reflections as a young man, obviously an interest in politics coming up and seeing these headlines day after day. In some cases, we have headlines like this today. How are you feeling about the world, about the country right now, about the way things are going?
Yeah, well, after seeing what happened today, I hope that just for a minute we can, get beyond the political divide that is very obvious in our country, and just, at least agree on condemning this kind of violence, and acknowledging that this is not the answer to problems that people have with one another. Charlie was just somebody who like I said, wanted to talk to people and give people a platform to ask questions and give good faith responses. And that's how he was able to just impact the lives of so many people. Was just by, not he's doing this unscripted. He's, talking to everyday college students like myself. And so I would say that even in this time of a heartbreaking loss, I'm still hopeful for the country's future, and I'm hopeful that to see that we can still condemn these kinds of political violence, like what took place today, and still unite as Americans.
I know there's still probably a lot for you and your colleagues in UNC college Republicans to kind of process right now, but anything else that you'd like to leave our viewers with here on Live Impact News before we wrap things up, either about this specific instance or just the larger picture of what we're seeing as a nation?
Yeah, I would say that the goal, I would say, of something like this happening, it was specifically targeted toward Charlie Kirk and toward who he was and the message that he brought. This wasn't an accident. This was clearly targeted and meant to take him out and meant to discourage people. And after seeing that today, we are all obviously heartbroken and shocked at what happened. But at the same time, we're not going to let these kinds of political violence. We're not going to let it silence us. We're not going to go hiding into the shadows. We're not just going to pack things up and move on and take this give in to the demands of these perpetrators of political violence. We're not going to be scared. We're not going to cave into the will of political violence like this. And so that's what I would say is just, don't let acts of violence like this that are meant to silence movements, that are meant to instill fear, don't let them win. Keep going and, do to other conservatives out there, to other Americans, just honor, I would say to honor Charlie's legacy, in what he did of just open dialogue and wanting to talk to people. I think that's something that people can acknowledge was a positive that he did across political aisles, regardless of whether you agreed with him or not. And so that's my message.
Preston Hill with UNC College Republicans, thank you so much for your time here on Live Impact News.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate your insights. Folks who are watching here on Live Impact, we're going to take a quick break here. 2 minutes. We'll be back on the other side with all we know about this incident. Stick with us. All right, folks, thanks so much for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. Once again, I'm Vanessa Rufus. We continue to cover, as some have called here, a political assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah as he was speaking on the campus of Utah Valley University. Several moments ago, we got an update from authorities, and essentially what we're seeing here, there is a person of interest in custody. And we are also told there is a separate person. So there was some video that has been circulating showing a gentleman who appears to be elderly wearing a blue sweater or shirt on the ground in handcuffs. We are told that is a different person. That person has apparently been booked on obstruction charges, apparently unrelated to a shooting itself. So this separate person, we're seeing this person of interest who's in custody, authorities not sharing too much about them. We expect maybe because of legal reasons and an ability to question this person. However, NBC News is actually reporting that a source is telling them that the FBI apparently is confident that this person of interest is the shooter. That's according to a senior official who is actually referring to that X post that FBI Director Kash Patel put out shortly before 6:30 this evening. And that did spark a bit of confusion, since at that very moment, authorities were giving a live in-person briefing to reporters, and they said that they were still looking for information. They were still looking for anybody who might be related to this. They later clarified, saying that they simply just wanted the public to know that they were out there seeking for any information, video, anything that could help with this investigation. But you're seeing now some previous aerial images of the campus cleared out shortly after that shooting. What we understand, Mr. Kirk was on campus there at Utah Valley giving a presentation. About 20 minutes into that presentation, witnesses heard gunshots from a nearby building, and there was video that showed shortly after Mr. Kirk slumping over with blood dripping down his neck. He was quickly ushered off the campus, brought to a hospital, and then we eventually learned that he was in critical condition. It was the news that he had passed, actually, that was broken by President Trump himself. Of course, President Trump close with Mr. Kirk. So the campus empty, as you can see from these aerials. We essentially saw authorities there telling folks to get off the campus as quickly as possible. Obviously, classes were closed, and folks being told to evacuate, to the point where, as they were still actually looking for a shooter, they were clearing buildings, and police were offering escorts to students who might be trapped in buildings and afraid to leave, since that shooter at the time we were seeing was still at large. We've got some images to show you now, kind of a diagram that has been prepared showing the general location, we believe, where the shots were reportedly fired from. This is called the Losi Center. This is there on the campus, and the red square you can see was where Mr. Kirk was speaking. Approximately 520 feet. Authorities in their briefing around 6:30 this evening telling us that it appears the shooter fired from the top of the building. However, they were unable to confirm. They did not want to say the nature of the firearm. They wouldn't even confirm whether a firearm was recovered on scene. Basically saying that the investigation's underway and they'll reveal more information as they are able to. So at this point, very active investigation. We also know tonight, as we're starting to see reaction come in from across the nation, we are seeing political leaders on both sides of the aisle who are remarking on political violence. And so that has become a big dialogue here tonight, as of course this is not the only instance of political violence that has happened this year, with one of the more recent instances coming back in June with the assassination and attempted assassination of lawmakers in Minnesota. Speaking of reaction, and of course the president, we have here a post from Truth Social with President Trump commenting, this is as he was breaking the news to the nation, saying, quote, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erika, and family. Charlie, we love you," he concludes. And so we are seeing other political figures come forward. For example, House Speaker Mike Johnson sharing with reporters earlier today that he denounced the political violence, saying that this has to stop. Some of those comments, actually, I think we've got queued up. We can play those for you right now. And keep in mind, this is not only on one side. We're seeing the other side of the political aisle remarking, but we'll talk about that in just a moment.
We just want to make a brief statement here. And I'm going to go and ask my colleagues to join me in a moment of silence for our dear friend Charlie Kirk. We ask everyone to pray for him and his family. I'm just going to state the obvious here. This is detestable, what's happened. Political violence has become all too common in American society, and this is not who we are. It violates the core principles of our country, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our civil society, our American way of life, and it must stop. We need every political figure, we need everyone who has a platform to say this loudly and clearly. We can settle disagreements and disputes in a civil manner, and political violence must be called out, and it has to stop. Again, we ask for prayer. I'm going to go lead the chamber here in a moment of silence, and we hope for the best for Charlie. Thank you.
So House Speaker Mike Johnson once again making remarks following the shooting of Charlie Kirk, denouncing political violence. Really, that's the commentary we're seeing from a lot of folks in the political sphere tonight. In fact, former President Joe Biden posting on X just a couple of hours ago saying, quote, "There is no place in our country for this kind of violence. It must end now. Jill and I are praying for Charlie Kirk's family and loved ones." And we also know that among the first to make comments from the political sphere on social media as well, Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat from California. And he basically said here, I'm going to paraphrase, but the attack on Charlie Kirk is disgusting, vile, and reprehensible. We must reject political violence in every form. So keep in mind, we're working here on starting to bring you more coverage of that specific dialogue. We mentioned the fact that Minnesota just dealt with this several months back. So we hope to have a report from you from the scene there to talk about the aftermath of instance of political violence, how that impacts the community, and what happens after that. So that's something that we hope to bring you. Also, we're just getting commentary too from young Republicans. If you just missed our earlier hour of coverage, we spoke with Preston Hill, who is with the UNC College Republicans, talking about how this is not going to silence them, that this is almost kind of driving them more to want to continue what they saw as, you know, the ideals that Mr. Kirk stood for about free speech and dialogue and debate. And so this is something that is really sparking a big reaction from a lot of folks in different ways. Also seeing commentary like this, we're going to show it to you, an earlier interaction with reporters and South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who did take a moment to point the finger for this shooting that happened today, and was followed up pretty quickly with a reporter question referencing Minnesota. So let's listen into that right now.
I'm going to say this. Democrats own what happened today. I am devastated. My kids have called panicking. They probably, all the kids of every conservative in the country call panicking. Just because you speak your mind on an issue doesn't mean you get shot and killed. And he was talking about mass tranny violence when this happened. In this country, we have the First Amendment. We have freedom to speak what's on our mind and shouldn't get shot because we believe in our system of democracy, conservative, liberal, whatever you are. You shouldn't be shot for your beliefs. Nobody believes in that. And I hope that every single Democrat across the country will stand up and acknowledge that they have a problem within their party. I just can't even. My staff are freaking out. My children are panicked. I'm a very outspoken member. There are many outspoken members on both sides of the aisle. I got in a screaming match with one of my colleagues say on the floor because she had decided to attack the way my body looks because I don't want men in women's bathrooms. So when are my colleagues on the left side of the aisle, the Democrats, going to own the violence that's happening in this country against Republicans and against conservatives? It's unforgivable what's happening right now, and it's only going to get, I don't see it getting better. I'm worried about copycats. I actually just got off the phone with the Capitol Police. I've requested a meeting with the Sergeant at Arms. I am very worried. I sent my staff home today. They're gone. I don't want them in my offices because I'm worried about the safety of the people who work for me. And now we have to look at how are we going to function once we get through this devastating day, which it does not look very good right now. But how do we move forward? Like, I want to be able to walk and go to work like everybody else. I want my employees to be able to go to work, not be afraid to show up at the office. People are scared, and it's wrong, and we've got to come together as a country, but it's only going to get better if Democrats step up to the plate and take responsibility for what's happening in this country, the threats that are happening,
but Congresswoman,
and come together.
By that logic, do Republicans own the shooting of the 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota?
Political,
isn't this on both sides?
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm asking.
We don't know what condition Charlie Kirk is in right now. Some raging leftist lunatic put a bullet through his neck, and you want to talk about Republicans right now? No.
No, I'm asking.
No, not at all.
You said the Democrats
own it too. No, this is on. Democrats own this.
But isn't there a problem with political violence across the spectrum?
Yeah, we're talking about Charlie Kirk right now. That's the subject of this that we're talking about right now. Democrats own this 100%.
Congresswoman, you said all political violence.
I'm not going to let you take the conversation somewhere else.
You said all political violence is
100%. I've spoken about political violence when Ben Shapiro's house got burned down, when his house got burned down, Governor Shapiro, when Nancy Pelosi's husband got hurt. I've spoken out against violence of all kinds when it's been Republican or Democrat alike. But what I don't usually see is saying Democrats when something happens to us. Charlie Kirk, we don't know if he's dead or alive right now. President Trump gets shot, and you guys say, oh, okay, he didn't get shot, even though he got shot in the ear. I mean, they need to own the rhetoric. They need to own what's happening in this country right now. No one said anything about the young Ukrainian girl. None of y'all in the mainstream press wanted to write about the girl on the Charlotte train. Who wrote about that? Raise your hand. Anyone write about it?
No, they didn't. It's been all over the news.
Okay.
It's on every single news channel.
Did you cover it?
Well, I cover Congress.
Manu, did you cover it?
We all covered it. We're all covered it. We're all covered
every network.
I beg to differ. There are way more stories about Republicans than you guys have about Democrats or people on the left doing stuff, and it's bullshit.
What did the Capitol Police tell you when you spoke to them earlier?
I have asked for a meeting with the Sergeant at Arms. I will get it hopefully today. I am very worried about security measures and security protocols. We've gone through this before. I am more concerned about it now than I've ever been. We've decided that we will not be doing any outdoor events for the foreseeable future. I'm going to talk to the Sergeant at Arms about hardened security and also physical security. I know that they've increased the budget for members, Republican and Democrat alike, as they should. Everybody should get security, particularly for high-profile members. But we have to talk about, like I'm traveling. I need to have security everywhere I travel because I'm recognizable. I have a trip tomorrow I'm very concerned about. But when you have high-profile members of Congress on either side of the aisle that are getting death threats daily, like we are, regardless of your political affiliation, you should get added security. I am deeply concerned. My staff is concerned. I sent my employees home today. Because I want to make sure that when they come back to the office that they feel safe. That's the number one thing.
After the Minnesota shooting, there was a big push among Republicans to get more security. As you mentioned, the budget increase was part of that.
$50 million. There's been a $50 million increase for private security for members of Congress.
So have you noticed a tangible difference in security measures, I guess, aside from that, since that moment?
I've had slightly increased security for a while now, and I actually in the last 2 weeks have been trying to seek clarification from the Ethics Committee on what private security means in terms of the $50 million budget. They doubled the amount of budget where you can have security measures at your home, but then also when you need private security, I've asked for clarification on that because I want to make sure that we're following all the rules, and what buckets that can come out of to get better security for us. So I'm trying to get clarification myself. I have been for a couple of weeks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Once again, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace making commentary on the political climate right now and concerns over safety, violence that might be, brought against lawmakers. And you just heard her talking about requesting a meeting with the Sergeant at Arms for Congress, basically wanting to talk about more protection, saying her staffers are even concerned for themselves as well. We alluded to this, that we were going to have some more insights coming from a community that has dealt with this before. Political violence. Minnesota, we talked about the assassination, attempted assassination that happened there just a few months ago. On the other side of this break, we are going to be joining with one of our colleagues from our sister station there in Minneapolis to talk about what sort of impact this has on the community, the dialogue it sparks, and the changes, if any, that happen in the wake of a horrible situation like this. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus once again. We continue our coverage here of the assassination, as some have characterized it, of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, the reaction pouring in tonight. And one of the things we alluded to before we went to break, the fact that political violence does impact a community, and there have been instances of political violence that have happened quite recently. So with that, we want to join with Morgan Wolf, who is with our sister station in Minneapolis. Y'all have been covering, of course, not only the attempted assassination of lawmakers there in Minnesota, but also kind of the fallout, what happens after that, the impact to the community. So Morgan, thanks so much for joining us here on Live Impact News, giving us some insights on what this does for a community and the dialogue it sparks.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I thought of immediately when I heard about what happened with Charlie Kirk was what we went through this summer with the assassination of our House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband and dog, and attempted assassination of Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette and his daughter Hope. And you know, it's one of those things that even though these people had different identities and political associations, I think collectively all of our hearts can drop. And they're so similar in a sense, Charlie and what Minnesota experienced, but entirely different at the same time. You know, Charlie being targeted in an open area surrounded by students at a campus versus Mark and Melissa and the Hoffmans being targeted in their own homes. And so, Vanessa, I know you guys, before we hopped on here, we were just chatting briefly. It just, that day, speaking personally, will forever stay with me. I am our weekend anchor, and I woke up early for some reason, I think my dog got me up, and I just checked my phone quick, and I saw all of these emails coming in around like 7 a.m. of potential lawmaker shooting was the subject line. And I just was so confused, and I sat up and I thought to myself, I'm like, what? Like this isn't something that would happen, and let alone on a Saturday morning in Minnesota. And then sure thing, I rushed into the station, and we were finding out more and more that this was someone that dressed up as a police officer and went to their homes in the middle of the night and targeted Minnesota legislators. And I don't think anyone ever imagined that would be something that would happen, let alone having it happen to state leaders in that sense. And so just recounting everything, it was so eerie going through that and thinking that they didn't catch the guy right away. In fact, this was the largest manhunt that Minnesota experienced in its history. It took over 24 hours for authorities to find and arrest Vance Belter, the man that committed this act. And it just was such, like I said, I just am losing the words because it just felt so shocking. And I think even, a few months later, a lot of people are having a hard time coming to the realization of it. I mean, Minnesota is about to have a special session after 2 weeks ago, we experienced a school shooting in Minneapolis, and the special session will be the first time that lawmakers will all be together again without their Democratic leader in the House, Melissa Hortman. And it just really is, I think, a tough time in America right now, where we are seeing people targeted and killed for their political beliefs. Vance Belter, we know, had a manifesto going through all of his beliefs of why he was targeting state legislators. There was a quote unquote list that had a lot of other people's names on it, including our governors. And, I'm sure we will be finding out more and more about the shooter involved in Charlie Kirk's case here. But you have to imagine that Charlie was targeted because of his political beliefs, because he is so active and vocal about them. He is, as you know, a conservative activist and has really risen to fame on social media. He has over 5 million followers on Instagram alone, and it's going to be very interesting and I'm sure disturbing to find out details about this shooter when it comes out.
Now, we know that, we just played that soundbite with Nancy Mace, the congresswoman from South Carolina, talking about how she is calling for more security. And she's, in fact, supposed to meet with the sergeant-at-arms soon to discuss that. I'm just curious, in the wake of what y'all went through in your community, how was this discussed in the sense of we need more security, we need to dial back the political, violence? Well, like what direction did it go, I guess, in the wake of these killings or in attempted killings?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first and foremost, political violence has been denounced by every state leader in Minnesota. There were so many people across the country that stood by Minnesota. For example, Joe Biden, former President Joe Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris went to Melissa Hortman's funeral. And so I believe everyone, where you are on the aisle, it doesn't matter, is standing firmly in we cannot have these political assassinations happening. And right now, the conversation in Minnesota really has been focused on Capitol security, because we are one of the states where you are able to walk into our state capitol and walk up to a state legislator at the time and talk to them. And that is something that we always just assumed was normal for us in Minnesota. And come to learn of it, there are a few different states that don't allow that and have tighter security restrictions. We just weren't one of them. But that is going to likely change. From conversations I've had with some of our representatives and senators at the Capitol, they are really pushing for more security measures. In fact, actually, just like a month ago, I believe it was, there was a man that was arrested on our Capitol grounds, not once, twice, but 3 times, and he was found having a mental health incident inside the Capitol. He was helped. He was brought to a hospital. He is okay. He has been charged. But it brought up so many of those bells that people were already thinking about after the political assassinations of, what does security look like for Minnesota moving forward? And a lot of legislators are pushing for not only tighter restrictions on guns in our capital, because we are one of the capitals that you can bring a gun into. They want to crack down on that. They also are pushing for some metal detectors when you walk in the door. And recently, after that incident that I just mentioned about that man trespassing, they have limited the number of entrances to our state capitol. There were so many different ways that you could get in. And now you have, I think it is about 4 entrance and exits. And for us as press, they really have changed how they treat us too. We all now are required to go in and grab a press badge, and that will have a key for us to get into the building, because as you know, sessions can go really late at the Capitol, and so we're there in wee hours of the night. But that is something that we never really had to think about. Now that we have to have that security access as well. And it just kind of, shows the times that we're in. I think there really is a lot of fear for any local government. Certainly there's that fear at the national government level too, just in conversations that I've had with some of our U.S. Senate members and U.S. House representatives. And I just don't really know, though, how do we fix it, though, moving forward outside of where they're going to be? And you can't have metal detectors in every single building that a representative walks into. Or, for example, Charlie Kirk, not even an elected official, but certainly a political figure, had this event that he has done many times at different campuses, but this was open air in the amphitheater, and people were allowed to walk in and out. So I think it's just it's going to be a daily question and struggle about security moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point in that, several moments ago when we had that latest update from authorities from Utah, you actually heard the Utah Valley University Chief of Police, Jeffrey Long, essentially describing the venue. And there were a lot of questions about security, as a lot of witnesses were essentially, in recent hours following the shooting, describing how there were no metal detectors and folks were just kind of able to walk in. Some folks were even say they weren't even checking tickets. And Jeffrey Long had essentially said that they had 3,000 people attending, and I believe he said they had 6 officers working the event. And he went on to say, quote, "You tried to have your bases covered, and unfortunately we didn't." And so bringing up, the later conversation probably to have of what does security at these events look like? And will that change, I guess, the tone of the events going forward? As you mentioned, this is kind of the type of event that Mr. Kirk would have, frequently. It would be open air dialogue, debate, face to face with folks. So I think it is an interesting time that we're in. I'm just curious to hear if you've been hearing from lawmakers about whether they want to go on doing what they're doing, in the sense of, do they want to continue to serve with that spotlight and the fact that political violence is such a prominent, probably, concern or fear at this point?
I just have to say, it really doesn't feel real that we're even having this conversation. As someone that's been in this business for 10 years, I never thought that I would cover those big catalyst stories like an attempted assassination on a president. And we've covered that. And then to experience that a political assassination, not just an attempted, but a full-on assassination in my home state, it is just utterly confusing, honestly, to think of how we got here. But there are those conversations with our lawmakers right now that are scared, that do have those fears. There was one of the lawmakers I interviewed, actually, it was a few weeks ago, I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago or so, it was actually her first time talking since the political assassination. Her name is Representative Blaha, and Boehner, sorry, excuse me. And she was one of the homes that the assassin went to before he went to Melissa Hortman's. So I don't know if you remember this timeline. This is kind of getting into deeper details that I'm sure not everyone got the full picture, but being in Minnesota, this is what we reported on, is that Vance Belter, in those wee hours of the night, he went to John Hoffman's home, Senator Hoffman's, shot him and his wife, and then he went to 2 other lawmakers' homes between the time that he went to Speaker Hortman's home and killed her and her husband and dog. I spoke to one of those 2 lawmakers who broke down about this, as you would imagine. And we were actually doing a story on a different piece of legislation, but I just asked her, how are you doing? And she says every day has been hard. And that just is very telling to me, because here they are as elected officials trying to do right by their constituents and pass laws, but they lost a friend, and that is not something that is lost on them. It's very much so in their minds. And even just speaking with the Republican House leader a few days ago, she said, we absolutely are thinking about Melissa Hortman, especially as they are heading back to this special session after the Annunciation school shooting. So they are so focused on their job still, but it is very much so there. There have been lawmakers that have said, though, that it has motivated them to do their job and to pass bills and to carry on what they say was Melissa's vision and her beliefs. So there's that side of it, but then also the dark, grim side that they feel threatened, that they know that this is no longer an irrational fear of someone coming after them because they are an elected official. It's a very real fear.
Yeah, really difficult concept to try to navigate. And yeah, I fully understand, kind of the 2 sides. In fact, earlier this hour, we're speaking with a young Republicans group, and the young man was telling us he goes to UNC Chapel Hill. He was, what you mentioned about wanting to carry forward ideals, but he said this is only spurring us to want to continue on and carry on Charlie Kirk's legacy. But yeah, the fact that these events are happening, they've happened, they're concrete, it's a reality. I can see that probably sitting heavy with so many folks tonight. Morgan, anything you'd like to leave our viewers with here on Live Impact before we wrap things up? Just either about, what you've experienced in Minnesota, what happens maybe weeks later after all of the spotlight dies down and the community is left still grappling with this. Anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I'll just say that, as I mentioned before, I know Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk were not on the same political track and didn't share the same political beliefs. But I think that right now, what I wished would have happened is after Melissa Hortman was assassinated, I wish people didn't point fingers right away. And that might be just my opinion and throwing it out there. I wish people didn't point fingers right away and just felt the loss. And so I feel that there is a time to discuss this further, and people can take partisan sides when they want. But it I think people need to just take in this moment and realize, put away the platform that Charlie Kirk had. And just think about, this was someone that was shot and killed in front of a crowd of people, and let that hit. And then tomorrow you pick up and you move forward, and the investigation, they continue the investigation. because that was just something that was also really just hard. I think, as you know, we had so many different voices just coming at us, and we were trying to report on everything we were hearing. And it was just like, I wish we could just pause, you know, and sit in that moment. But moving forward now, after what we experienced was, it was kind of similar in the sense that we had a manhunt, and they are still, what I believe, searching for the suspect, even though they said that they have a person in interest, but they did not say if it was the shooter or not. But there was, of course, the search, which Minnesota had all of the resources towards. The White House, FBI, they got involved in lended resources. The Minnesota BCA was involved, and having actually worked in Utah, I know that they have a very collaborative system in place as well, and they're already, I'm sure, working together tirelessly. But then once that happens, if there is someone that is taken into custody, they will be charged. They'll have their day in court. Utah does carry the death penalty. Vance Belter is facing some charges that could carry the death penalty as well. And I need to go back and reference when he's going to be next in court, but I know that he has pled not guilty. So after this terrible, terrible incident, and after the grief and the chaos settles, then that's when the track of justice will continue. And that's when you get the updates on court findings and documents. And that's when we'll maybe learn more about this whole situation, what perhaps motivated this shooter. If we know for sure if they did act alone. I know police said that they believe that this was a targeted shooting and the shooter acted alone. But you'll find out more of those details. And it's hard because it can be re-traumatizing for a lot of people. And I think Minnesotans experience that, whether they worked with Melissa and Mark, were family, were friends, or just someone watching at home. I think the updates on the case and the updates on the story, they can be re-traumatizing. And on that note, I think it's just important for everyone, if you're feeling anything, talk to someone and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And mental health is so important. And especially, I don't know if you guys have had this discussion yet, but we have resources that were given to reporters and people in the building after everything that we experienced, because I think you almost take on a sense of shock as well when you're out there covering it. And I can say that too, just from the mass shooting that we had within the last 2 weeks, that, people have been utilizing those mental health resources that we have. So this is just, unfortunately, the tip of the iceberg for this story, though, with Charlie Kirk. And as I mentioned, there's going to be many days to come where this will be a topic of conversation.
Yeah, a lot of questions left unanswered. Morgan Wolf with KARE 11, our sister station in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We appreciate your insights. Really, really interesting conversation. We're so glad to have you here on Live Impact News.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And folks who are watching here, we'll just let you know we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We're going to be back on the other side. We had alluded to the fact that there was just a briefing around the 6:30 Eastern time range. And so we want to kind of go back to that so you can listen to it in full and catch up on all of the very latest details in the shooting of Charlie Kirk as we know it at this hour. So stay with us. We're going to bring that to you once again in just 2 minutes. Thanks so much for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We're continuing our coverage here of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, and as some have characterized it, including Utah Governor Spencer Cox, the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. Although we are still waiting to hear more from police about the suspect. If there is one, we are told there's a person of interest who's in custody and any potential motive they might have had in this shooting today at the campus of Utah Valley University. We're going to turn now to some of the commentary we're seeing from the political sphere following this shooting. And as we mentioned, the big conversation about political violence coming up here. So you're going to hear from various leaders on that specific topic. Let's listen in.
This is detestable, what's happened. Political violence has become all too common in American society, and this is not who we are. It violates the core principles of our country, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our civil society, our American way of life, and it must stop.
Political violence, which this attack seems to be, has no place in this country. None. I'm deeply disturbed by the threat of violence that has entered our political life. And I pray that we will remember that every person, no matter how vehement our disagreement with them, is a human being and a fellow American deserving of respect and protection.
He had the ability to explain complex concepts to people in very simple, understandable terms, even people who hadn't historically been involved in politics or historically thought of themselves as conservatives or one way or another. And I think that's his legacy. And it's a legacy that's been cut far too short.
Political violence is not a solution. It is not an answer to disagreement over policy. And I think everybody really needs to take seriously both the security aspect, but also the rhetoric. It's got to stop.
So, of course, not only will political violence probably be discussed as an issue in the coming days, weeks, and months, but also discussions about security in general, because we are seeing that coming up as a question, as we have been hearing. We alluded to this before, the fact that various witnesses, folks who were at this event where Mr. Kirk was speaking on the school campus, were saying that they didn't have to go through metal detectors, that they weren't even checking tickets at one point. And we had heard that the Utah Valley Chief of Police remarking in an earlier briefing this evening, talking about they had 3,000 people attending, looked like they had a handful of officers who were actually working the event. So with that, we want to turn to some insights from Charles Ramsey, who's the former Philadelphia police chief, discussing the situation. Let's listen in.
Well, I mean, the fact that if it turns out to be that he took the shot from that distance, then I agree with John. That indicates a rifle was used. It is possible, since it was pre-planned, that the weapon could have been pre-planted in the university and hidden. So it wouldn't draw attention. If you did it the day before when nobody's on campus of any significance, I don't think people would pay much attention. So we don't know a lot of things right now. Is this person who did the shooting, are they an employee of the university? Is it a person who has been there in the past and has access to buildings and so forth? We just don't know a lot. The bottom line is this: outdoor scenes in events are very difficult to secure. Very difficult to secure. Indoor venues, much easier. And when you have a crowd like that, of that size, with an individual who may be controversial in some ways, but he's not going to get the same level of security that a president did. And as John mentioned, I mean, President Trump was shot in an outdoor event, and he had Secret Service and other types of security at the time as well. So if you really think that, you know, to be able to actually secure all these events, can law enforcement do it? You have no idea how difficult and how many people it takes to really lock down a specific venue that's outdoors. It would take a lot of resources. And I just don't think that's going to happen. And it's a tragedy. It's a shame. Don't know if there were any threats that were made toward him that would give an indication that perhaps he was in jeopardy. But we live in a country now where there's a gun culture. I mean, this could be something where, people are allowed to carry guns on campus. We just don't know what the motive was around this individual. But I think it's pretty safe to say there was some political motive behind it. But I mean, we have an environment right now where we've got extreme left and extreme right. And when you've got the country divided like that, yeah.
So once again, former Philadelphia Police Chief Charles Ramsey speaking on the difficulties of enforcing security at an event, although we have been hearing once again from various witnesses in attendance of the event that it seemed like security was lax in general, but you heard the former police chief there talking about how the outdoor element certainly adds an extra layer of concern as far as protecting folks. And we'll just remind you once again, the latest information from officials that we received tonight was that whoever this shooter was, the shots were reportedly fired from the top of what's called the Low C Center. It's about 500 feet away from that outdoor space where Charlie Kirk was speaking at the time. We continue now diving into the reaction from folks across the nation this evening. We have Caroline Hupp, who is joining us. Caroline, thank you so much for your time. We understand you're the vice president of the College Republicans at App State University in Boone. So thank you so much for your time here. And tell us your thoughts tonight. How are you feeling? How are you reacting? What are you hearing from your fellow members of the College Republicans?
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it was a shock. Half of us were in class, the other were on campus. We actually typically meet Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday, and this was one of the nights that we have our meetings. So we also have a Turning Point chapter on campus as well. So seeing the different reactions both from the College Republicans and Turning Point was just a shock. I mean, I was coming back from a hike and I see all these messages and it's like Charlie Kirk's been shot, and someone found the uncensored video, and people, it was just like our hearts stopped, and half of us just feel sick from just this tragedy that has happened. And the other half are wanting to uphold Charlie Kirk's legacy. And one of our members noted at our meeting that this is the most social media presidents that we have had to be united as conservatives. And it's something nice to see, but to come in such a bad way.
Now, I mean, we've heard. We've heard this evening the Utah Governor Spencer Cox essentially calling this a political assassination. Your thoughts tonight on where we stand as a nation, political violence, the rhetoric that we're seeing right now. How are you feeling as a young person, seeing what's happening, watching these headlines, seeing what transpired today?
I personally feel that it's very disheartening to see that we are conservatives and liberals are being attacked for the views. Again, very disheartening to see that people choose the route of violence when one person has doesn't agree with you. And I think that there are many other ways outside of violence that we can solve these problems. And at the end of the day, it is the narrative from media, from social media to news outlets, that it was what makes these types of events hurt, because there's just so much different information going around. People don't know what is right, what's wrong. And so I think part of what happened with Charlie Kirk was people were like, oh, he's been shot. People saying that he's dead. People saying that he's in stable conditions. What is it, So seeing this, it really hurts, and our prayers are to Charlie Kirk and his family and to all conservatives across the nation. I know that he was, at least for Gen Z, he was our advocate for our beliefs and our views, and he's someone that we felt touched us in so many ways. And it's just sad to see that his life is now sadly at peace in heaven.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to talk more about, his impact on you. Clearly, he spoke to you. We know he's a polarizing figure, whether you agree or disagree with him. I mean, he was there and he was voicing his opinion. So I guess talk about, how he spoke to you and why he was such a key figure in your life politically and why it sounds like you looked up to him. So why? And explain that for folks watching here.
I remember seeing videos in high school just of Charlie Kirk when he started out, and I'm like, oh, that's like a really interesting person. I think the thing that popped at first was because of how vocal he is and was about his views, and being able to see that he can defend himself even against the masses. Felt really encouraging to me, and I know as well as a bunch of other members in our club and organization feel similarly. What I loved the most about him was how he was able to bring both politics and religion together within the conservative group. A lot of people don't like that, but as a Catholic, I feel like the way he presented his views really took place in my heart, and just seeing him within the past 2 years, I mean, go from where he was to where he is now. He was president of Turning Point, but I feel like he has really just stepped up with not just Turning Point, but all conservatives across the United States. And so that's just one of the many things that struck at my heart with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, and I guess what of his views spoke to you the most? What do you feel like, he understood about you and what you care about as a conservative American that really spoke to you?
More specifically, the solutions that he provided, if it was like between same-sex marriage or gun rights, gun control. It just, honestly, all of it really just stuck out to me the most. But I mean, he was just someone that I very much liked, and proud to be in the same party as him and have him advocate for my generation. And the hope was, future generations as well. But as you know.
Well, Caroline, I know this is pretty early on and probably still trying to process this news. I'm kind of curious how you and your fellow college Republicans plan to go forward, given what happened. Are there, any plans to honor him in certain ways, or what can you, I guess, tell us about that aspect going forward?
So we met tonight. We really the officers were considering, should we still have our meeting? And we all unanimously agreed that we still needed to have our meeting. We decided to pivot from what we originally planned to do. And so instead, we decided to talk about the stabbing in Charlotte, because that did happen between our last meeting and this meeting, as well as the news with Charlie Kirk. It was still very fresh, so still trying to figure out what's happening. And we typically have people come in prior to our meeting just to be there early. And we had members from Turning Point coming in as well, just because they just felt lost, and they wanted to connect with those with similar values. So they came in, and we all just kind of talked about his legacy, what he meant to us. We had the news on in the background. We did watch the press release from the Utah, I believe it was the police department and the governor. But tomorrow night we planned for a 9/11 memorial, and we will be including a memorial for Charlie Kirk. Turning Point has a memorial for 9/11 on Sanford Mall early today, but I believe we are going to go to each other's events as well. And I do briefly know that Turning Point was supposed to have their inaugural meeting tomorrow, but that was canceled. It came from higher up in the nation, just pausing all events Turning Point related for the next week, just because of how shaken everyone everyone is. And I was reading in the chat earlier, a lot of them got out of class about 4 o'clock time frame, and they all met at the library and just prayed for a few minutes. And we did that again at the meeting, both opening and closing. And we will do it again tomorrow night when we both honor both those that were lost their lives at 9/11 and Charlie Kirk. So that's what we plan to do, at least in the near future. It's still very fresh, but we know that Charlie Kirk would still want us to push on and continue his legacy in pushing conservative Christian values.
Caroline Hupp, thank you so much for your time and for joining us to give us your insights and your reactions tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, folks, we actually want to turn to some breaking developments on the investigation front. Just moments ago, FBI Director Kash Patel has posted on X that the suspect, or the subject rather, who is in custody, the one we've been referring to all evening, the person of interest, has been released after law enforcement interrogated them. So he goes on to say, as you can see, the investigation continues. He says, we will continue to release information in interest of transparency. So the situation, as we understand it at this point, there is no longer a person of interest in custody. They were questioned by authorities. And there is a separate person who was, we understand, charged with obstruction charges. That's the person we see in a lot of the videos that are going viral, who we see being arrested and detained. That is a different person who authorities have said is not related to the shooting, but separately has been booked for obstruction. George Zinn was that person's name. This person in custody, however, who at one point this evening, a senior official had told NBC News they thought with pretty high confidence this person was the shooter, apparently has now been released. So where the investigation goes from here, we're unsure, but we do know that FBI has actually set up a digital tip line for folks to share any information, videos, photos, whatever they might know. That tip line can be found at the FBI Salt Lake City social media pages. But essentially, it's tips.fbi.gov, and there's more to the web address, but tips.fbi.gov. And I know that authorities will continue to want to call for information, especially given the developments of this person of interest now being released. All right, folks, a lot to catch up on here when we get back from this quick break. 2 minutes, we'll be back here with Live Impact News. We appreciate you sticking with us here as we continue our coverage throughout the evening. All right, folks, thanks so much for staying with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We continue our coverage of the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. As we mentioned before, Utah governor has characterized this as a political assassination. And in just the last several moments, we learned from FBI Director Kash Patel that the person of interest that they had in custody this evening has apparently been released after being interrogated by authorities. So the investigation does continue here. We mentioned there's a digital tip line for folks that the FBI has put out to share information, videos, images, anything they might know about the shooting or the potential shooter here. So you can find more information on X and various social media platforms, as that is on the FBI Salt Lake City social media accounts. With that, we're going to turn to more reaction coming in following the loss of Charlie Kirk, and lots of folks are mourning. We see, particularly in the conservative realm, they have been sharing with us that he is really someone who spoke to them and really championed their ideals and stood for free speech, is some of the commentary we're hearing from folks speaking with us tonight. Joining us right now, we have Adele Bazarek, who is known by a lot of folks on Instagram as Truth Bomb Mom. And Adele, we understand you're also a Maha, if you will, influencer, and someone who has looked up to Charlie Kirk and is, of course, reacting to some of the news tonight. So what are your thoughts tonight? What's going through your mind right now as you're trying to process the news of what happened?
Well, it's been a crazy few hours, and everybody, including me, we're all shocked. This has absolutely been devastating. I kind of have this like sick feeling in my stomach. It doesn't even feel real that this has happened. It all happened just so fast, and I am trying to make sense of it myself, and so many others are as well. Like, why did this happen? Charlie's a wonderful guy. He's kind to everyone he meets. He always wants to have a civil discourse. He never wants to like insult anyone or put anyone down. And so it's just kind of trying to wrap our head around, why would this happen? Who could do such a thing, you know?
And I've been asking folks throughout the evening, you know, if they could explain what is it about Mr. Kirk that spoke to them, his ideals as they see it, you know, why Charlie Kirk? Why is this someone who is kind of a beacon of light in your life?
Yeah, sure. Charlie is so brilliant, and he has such strong morals and principles. And for me, I, started on this platform. I'm a shy stay-at-home mom, and he is just so bold and unapologetic, and that just inspired me to be the same way about the freedoms that I saw being threatened, especially around COVID and moving forward. And he has just made me feel strong and bold, and I feel like so many other people feel the same way.
And I mean, as far as the discussions that are happening tonight regarding political violence, and we are seeing folks on both sides of the aisle tonight denouncing this shooting and calling for an end to political violence. How do you see it as a mother? You're raising kids coming up in this country. You're watching this, they might be either watching this or will know about this in some way. How are you feeling about how we are as a nation?
I'm concerned, for sure. I have 4 children, and we are doing everything we can to raise them with good ideologies and morals and principles. But yes, I am very concerned about the political climate of our country, and I think it's time for people to take a step back and use reasoning and logic instead of using emotion to dictate what they're going to do next. And just like some people are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, and that really makes me sad because he's a human, and we all need to recognize that we're humans, and we're all we all have humanity, and so people just need to remember that.
And I mean, I feel like would have probably some knowledge of what it means to be a vocal, person. Maybe politically or how you feel about certain things, as you are, as we mentioned, on Instagram. You have 425,000 followers. You speak your mind clearly about how you feel about things. I'm sure you get commentary from folks. Do you ever feel like you experience or have experienced or could experience political backlash or are there any concerns that folks, have reached out to you in a negative and kind of scary way?
Oh, absolutely. I've been threatened with lawsuits. We've had, my husband and I own a local business. We've had people leave our local business. I've been called every name under the sun, but I believe in what I'm talking about, and I believe it's important to speak about. And for me, none of that really matters because the truth is more important.
So how are you going forward here tonight? Given what's happened, obviously you're trying to process it as well. What are you planning for, I guess, in the coming days? How will this move you? How will this impact you? And how do you plan to continue on?
Yeah. It's definitely not going to slow me down in any way. I feel like I do need a day or two just to process and just enjoy my children and my family and spend time with them because it is something that some people don't get to enjoy. And Charlie was taken from this world too soon. But it's definitely emboldened me even more. And I feel like there are a lot of people saying, you just created 1,000 more Charlie Kirks.
Adele, anything you'd like to leave our viewers with here on Live Impact News before we wrap things up, either about the situation at hand or just your general thoughts about what's going on right now?
Yeah. Where our country is so divided with, different ideologies, and everybody finds a way to be divided over different things they believe. And at the end of the day, we just need to remember that we're all humans and we all have struggles and things that we're dealing with. And we all just need to have more compassion and kindness toward one another.
Adele Bazarek, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights with us here on Live Impact News. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks here who are watching, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Much more coverage to come here of the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. We'll be back once again in just a couple of minutes. All right, folks, thanks so much for sticking with us here for Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. Of course, throughout the evening, we've been covering the reaction, what we know about the investigation into the deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk. As we mentioned, we had an earlier briefing today where officials, including the Utah Governor Spencer Cox, laid out what they knew and what they could really reveal to the public at the time. Essentially, the governor calling this a political assassination. Keep in mind as we listen to it, the person of interest in custody has since been released. That information coming once again just moments ago from a social media post from FBI Director Kash Patel. But with that, let's send you to the very latest of what we know regarding the shooting of Charlie Kirk.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bo Mason, Commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety. Today at approximately 12:20 Mountain Standard Time, political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot in an event at the Utah Valley University. He was taken by private vehicle to Timpanogos Hospital, where he later passed. The Utah Department of Public Safety will be co-leading this criminal investigation to find this killer, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are working in unison with the County Sheriff's Office, the local police department, and the University Police Department, all of which have been very cooperative and fully engaged in this process. Shooting, we did have a suspect in custody, George Zinn, but he was released from custody. He identified that he did not match the shooting suspect and was not an accurate person of interest. However, he has been booked into the county jail by Utah Valley University Police Department for obstruction of justice. We do still have an active investigation for the person of interest. This incident occurred with a large crowd around. There was one shot fired and one victim. While the suspect is at large, we believe this was a targeted attack towards one individual. This is a tragic moment in our state and in our country. As we heal, we encourage everyone who is struggling with news of the incident to call 988, our state mental health crisis line. In addition to that, our partners with the FBI will also be discussing other ways we can communicate through the public for tips and other information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. Our thoughts are also with the people who witnessed this traumatic event. We know that what you experienced was very difficult. Our thoughts are with you as well. As soon as we heard about the shooting, special agents and personnel from the Salt Lake Field Office responded immediately. We have full resources devoted to this investigation, including tactical, operational, investigative, and intelligence. To be clear, the FBI will fully support and co-lead this investigation alongside with our partners. We are working on setting up a digital media tip line, and as soon as it's established, we'll get that information out to everyone. I know there's a lot of questions. This is very much an active case, and this investigation is in its early stages. We are following all the leads and all the evidence. If anyone has any information, please report it to the FBI or local law enforcement. Thank you.
On behalf of President Tubanez, who we've been communicating with, and she's on her way back right now, I say that on behalf of Utah Valley University, we are shocked and saddened by the tragic passing of Charlie Kirk. We express our sincere condolences to the Kirk family. We grieve with our students, faculty, and staff who bore witness to this unspeakable tragedy. He was invited by the student group Turning Point USA to speak on our campus. We firmly believe that UVU is a place to share ideas and to debate openly and respectfully. Any attempt to infringe on those rights has no place here. We do not condone any form of violence at UVU and seek to make our campus a safe place for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this dark and tragic occasion. I want to thank our law enforcement officers who are leading this investigation, starting with Chief Long and his response here with the UVU Police Department. We're grateful for your leadership and your team. And again, to the speakers that you've just heard from who are co-leading this investigation. I also want to recognize Sheriff Mike Smith, who has been an invaluable partner as this investigation moves forward. I've been in touch with President Trump, with FBI Director Kash Patel. We are completely aligned with our state and federal partners as we work through this case. Now, this is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. We are celebrating 250 years of the founding of this great nation. That founding document, the Declaration of Independence, that this great experiment on which we embarked together 250 years ago, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. The first one of those is life. And today, a life was taken. Charlie Kirk was first and foremost a husband and a dad to 2 young children. He was also very much politically involved, and that's why he was here on campus. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. Historically, our university campuses in this nation and here in the state of Utah have been the place where truth and ideas are formulated and debated. And that's what he does. He comes on college campuses and he debates. That is foundational to the formation of our country, to our most basic constitutional rights. And when someone takes the life of a person because of their ideas or their ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened. Now, we have a person of interest in custody. The investigation is ongoing. But I want to make it crystal clear right now, to whoever did this, we will find you. We will try you. And we will hold you accountable to the furthest extent of the law. And I just want to remind people that we still have the death penalty here in the state of Utah. Our nation is broken. We've had political assassinations recently in Minnesota. We had an attempted assassination on the governor of Pennsylvania. And we had an attempted assassination on a presidential candidate and former president of the United States, and now current president of the United States. Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken. We mourn with his wife, his children, his family, his friends. We mourn as a nation. If anyone in the sound of my voice celebrated even a little bit at the news of this shooting, I would beg you to look in the mirror and to see if you can find a better angel in there somewhere. I don't care what his politics are. I care that he was an American. We desperately need our country. We desperately need leaders in our country. But more than the leaders, we just need every single person in this country to think about where we are and where we want to be. To ask ourselves, is this it? Is this what 250 years has wrought on us? I pray that that's not the case. I pray that those who hated what Charlie Kirk stood for will put down their social media and their pens and pray for his family, and that all of us will try to find a way to stop hating our fellow Americans. With that, we're happy to take a few questions.
The FBI director is posting that a suspect is in custody. I would just like clarification. Do you or do you not have a suspected shooter in custody?
We have a person of interest in custody that is being interviewed right now.
That is not George Zinn.
That is not George Zinn. That is correct.
Are you still searching or looking for another shooter or anybody else related to this?
Yes, we are actively looking for anyone and everyone who has any possible information relating to this shooting.
Can you tell us details about the suspect being taken into custody? Where? How long ago?
We cannot at this point, but we will get you that information when we can.
Is there believed to be a second individual involved in the shooting?
At this point, there is no information that would lead us to believe that there is a second person involved.
Can you guys talk about the possible shooting?
Do you want to talk about what we know there? Yeah.
The only information we have on the suspect, the possible shooter, is taken from closed-circuit TV here on campus. We do have that. We're analyzing it, but it is security camera footage, so you can kind of guess what the quality of that is. But we do know dressed in all dark clothing, but we don't have a much better description other than that.
Where do you think the shot came from?
The shot came from here on campus, from a location at a fair, potentially from a roof, yes. A longer distance shot from a roof.
So to clarify, with the security camera footage you have and the person of interest that's in custody, does that match up?
That's what we're trying to decipher right now.
So did FBI or DHS have anything on the threat board this morning?
I can't speak to that.
I'll just say that the investigation's ongoing, and as soon as we have further information, we will be sure to release it.
Any indications of foreign intelligence involvement?
As of now, I can't comment on any of that.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the security of the event itself? Who was there security-wise, and what happens on these kind of events?
Chief Long.
So my name is Jeff Long. I'm the police chief here at UVU, and I'll tell you right now, we're devastated. We're a small police department. We have a very large campus. We have over 40,000 students, and we love our students. We love our visitors, and we're devastated by what happened today. This is the police chief's nightmare. I'm very saddened for the Kirk family. I know his wife and parents found out about this. Obviously he's away from home. He's here in Utah. They find out by a police officer that visits their home. That's tragic. Nobody wants that. But I can tell you about our venue today. This was an open venue. This was outside. We did have 6 officers working that event. We had probably over 3,000 people that were in attendance. It sat down in kind of a bowl area here on the central campus. We have a waterfall area, and so he was kind of in a lower area, surrounded by buildings. We had some plainclothes police officers that were in the crowd as well. We train for these things, and you think you have things covered, and these things, unfortunately, they happen. You try to get your bases covered, and unfortunately today we didn't. And because of that, we had this tragic incident. So we did have officers there. We had Charlie Kirk's team. He has a security team that travels with him, and they were here with him when he was shot.
Was the gun recovered?
I'm sorry. See.
Was the weapon recovered?
At this point, I can't disclose that.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, there was a question being asked about mass shooting. Was that person apprehended, and do you know who asked that question?
Say the question again. I don't know if I understand what you're saying.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, he was answering a question about mass shootings specifically. Was that person apprehended, and do you know who asked that question?
I do not. We do not have that at this moment.
What kind of weapon was used?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for just one more question, so thank you.
Yeah, a question for the chief as well. Was it your team or Kirk's team, or a combination of both, that kind of set the security protocol for the event?
So we work together. He has his team, and they do this all over the country. We all know that. This is not uncommon for them. They're very comfortable on campuses, and I was coordinating with his lead security guy, and so yeah, we were working together.
Was this a sharpshooter type shot?
Ladies and gentlemen, those are all the questions that will be answered today. Again, thank you for covering this. We will be updating you as soon as we have additional information through normal channels, working with law enforcement. Again, our deepest condolences to the Kirk family and to the students who were there today. I would just ask everyone everywhere to please pray for their family and to pray for our country. We need it now more than ever. Thank you.
Once again, folks, that was the very latest briefing from officials there in Utah on the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Keep in mind, as we mentioned before, within the last 40 minutes, FBI Director Kash Patel has shared that that person of interest that they were speaking of in that briefing has since been released from custody following an investigation and interrogation by authorities. So the investigation does continue tonight. We want to turn now to even more reaction. Within the last couple of hours, we see California Governor Gavin Newsom with a pretty lengthy post on the social media platform X. You see, of course, half staff there over at the White House, but that was ordered by President Trump just this evening. And now we can see with that live image, the flags have now been lowered. But speaking on Mr. Newsom's comments tonight, we talked about how we have reaction from political leaders on both sides of the aisle. Governor Newsom was among the first we saw political leaders to tweet or put out posts condemning the political violence that we saw today. And he followed up just a couple of hours later with this post. And he goes on to say, we should all feel a deep sense of grief and outrage at the terrible violence that took place in Utah today. Charlie Kirk's murder is sick and reprehensible, he says, and our thoughts are with his family, children, and loved ones. He goes on to say, I knew Charlie and I admired his passion and commitment to debate. His senseless murder is a reminder of how important it is for all of us across the political spectrum to foster genuine discourse on issues that deeply affect us all without resorting to political violence. He goes on to say the best way to honor Charlie's memory is to continue his work, engage with each other across ideology through spirited discourse. In a democracy, ideas are tested through words and good faith debate, never through violence. Honest disagreement, he says, makes us stronger. Violence only drives us further apart and corrodes the values at the heart of this nation. Once again, folks, we're going to take a quick break here. We will be back on the other side just 2 minutes away with more coverage from Utah. Everyone, thanks so much for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We're continuing our coverage here of the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. As we've mentioned before earlier on this stream, referred to by Utah's governor as a political assassination. Continuing to see reaction pouring in tonight. Right now we're going to hear from Scott Jennings, who is a conservative political strategist as well as a commentator. Let's listen in right now.
Was just so large and powerful. He was able to convince people to get involved in politics that might not have otherwise done so. And you look at what he did on these campuses and in these public events, thousands of people were showing up, not for a rock concert, not for a sporting event, but for American politics. He inspired all these kids to be involved in their country. It's unequivocally a good legacy. He was also a godly person. He spoke about his faith openly. He was unapologetic about his views. I think what's been said about Charlie having his hand on the finger on the pulse of the MAGA base is true. But what's also true is that he was enormously influential in that when an issue was emerging, when something was happening and people were sorting out their own views on it. How should I feel about this? Charlie was one of the first people they turned to see where's Charlie going to be on this issue, and how's he processing it, how's he analyzing it, and how does he think the young conservative should view whatever the issue happened to be. So it wasn't that he was just reflecting people, he was leading people, he was influencing people. When he did something, when he said something, when he took a stand on an issue, you can bet that people would move. And so what he did to organize these young kids, to bring conservative values and views into public spaces that aren't normally thought of as places where conservatives would gather, was enormously courageous. It took a lot of damn guts to do it. And we'll never forget Charlie for being that next generation of conservative leader, rallying people when you might not have thought it was cool to do so, but he did it anyway. And he made it cool. And he made it, honestly, Charlie Kirk was a destination for a lot of young conservatives, and we're going to miss it.
Scott, I mean, one thing, it's worth just noting how young he was. I mean, he started this organization back in 2012. He was 18 years old.
Yeah.
He's 31 today. I mean, even, I think the Trump people at the beginning sort of raised an eyebrow. They thought, this kid, like, what does he know? Yeah. And he showed them all that he actually had what you are talking about. He had something.
He did. He had a charisma, and he had an ability to make politics engaging for that audience. He took something that some young people might find to be boring or out of reach, and he made it relevant and interesting for them. And once he had them, and once they were involved, he had then this ability to motivate them to do something with that. If you've ever been to one of these Turning Point USA rallies, I went to the one in Tampa just a few weeks ago, and I was honored he invited me to speak there. It was the first time I had done so. And it's just arena full of young people. Some are in college, some are in high school, some are just young adults. And their enthusiasm and zeal for the future of our country and how you change it for the better, and how they arrived at that was so inspiring. The way they arrived at it was because they were inspired by someone who knew how to use his voice, knew how to engage in debate and political rhetoric. What he was doing was the opposite of what's happened to Charlie. What's happened to him is violent, but he was using his words and his speech, which is our first protected freedom in this country. And so we're going to miss Charlie, and we pray for his wife and those babies. He leaves behind a young family. People like this who exist in the public sphere, we know them as public actors, and we see them in front of crowds, and we see them on TV and we hear them on the radio. But they go home at night too, and they open a front door, and they hug a wife, and they hug children, and they put them down, and they oversee the toothbrushing and everything just like the rest of us. And so there's that side of them that we don't often think about, but Charlie was doing that too. So I just think in moments like this, it's easy to analyze the politics, but you know, there was Charlie the husband and Charlie the father, and he'll be missed forever.
Since we've just learned of this, I think it's absolutely.
Once again, commentary there from Scott Jennings, who is a conservative political strategist and commentator reflecting on the impact of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Turning now to some live images coming to us directly from Utah. As you see, folks are expressing themselves in the wake of this news. Vigil of sorts that we're seeing. We're told this is not an official vigil for Turning Point USA, but this is just a gathering of folks there waving American flags, showing signs, as we can see right there along the roadway, as they try to express their feelings and kind of grapple with this loss. So those are some of the reactions that we're seeing from the Utah area. Looks like the shot has changed just a bit. From what I can tell, this is our other affiliate out in Utah. So we're just trying to get an idea of exactly what we're looking at. Keep in mind here on Live Impact News, we're kind of taking these feeds in fast and furious as they're coming in. And it looks like our source just got switched up there. So okay, our producer Jeb here is confirming that this is the official vigil now that this shot has been switched to there in Utah, a vigil that will honor the life and impact of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Wanted to do a quick recap to see how things stand here with that investigation, what we know, the very latest, because things have kind of evolved over the evening. But what we know as it stands tonight here, authorities, including the FBI, have been involved in trying to gather more information. There's a digital tip line that's been put out there on social media. You can find it on the FBI Salt Lake City social media accounts. There's a link that you can click and basically submit information, videos, photos, as we now know that whatever person of interest they had in custody earlier tonight has since been released. That's according to a social media post from FBI Director Kash Patel. So this investigation is still very active, and no doubt authorities are going to want as much information as possible. As we heard from that earlier briefing, though, that came around 6:30 Eastern Time, officials were talking about how essentially they had surveillance video, closed circuit TV is what they called it, but those school images, camera images showing the suspected shooter, they didn't have a great description to share other than it was a person all dressed in black. We know that Mr. Kirk was there at Utah Valley University today to be part of this presentation. He was speaking. We know he was about 20 minutes into speaking when witnesses reported gunshots from a nearby building. Our latest understanding is that person might have been at a building roughly 500 feet away from where Mr. Kirk was speaking, possibly on top of the roof, according to authorities in their latest briefing. They wouldn't comment on the nature of the weapon, only that the shot was apparently fired from a long distance away. They did not comment when asked by reporters whether they found a weapon when they took this person of interest into custody at the time. And we also know that some of the investigation surrounding the actual suspect, person of interest, if you will, has kind of been going back and forth in the sense that when we were following this around 3 o'clock Eastern Time here on Live Impact News, we had heard initially from the school that they had someone in custody. A couple hours later, we heard the school walk that back, saying, we actually don't have someone in custody. And then, as we mentioned, the latest briefing from officials around 6:30, they said that there was that person of interest. And at last check, that person of interest is now let go after an interrogation. Now, we should mention that there have been some videos circulating showing an elderly man wearing either a blue shirt, blue sweater of sorts, who was being detained and arrested. that is a separate person. We're told that person is not being looked at in connection to the shooting, but apparently that person has been booked for obstruction of justice. That man's name, according to authorities, is George Zinn. And essentially in the hours since, we've had an outpouring of reaction from both sides of the aisle. We mentioned this before many times during the stream tonight. Utah Governor Spencer Cox has described this incident as a political assassination. Of course, the authorities not knowing who the shooter is at this point that we know of, or really know their motivations, but just knowing the type of figure and the platform that Charlie Kirk had. Really drawing the conclusion that he was likely targeted, they say, because of his influence and his voice in the political sphere. Both sides of the aisle reflecting now on the state of the country, the state of political violence in the country, knowing that this is just the very latest in many political violence situations that we've seen, not just this year, but in recent years. This happened today, but we talked about this early in the stream, how back in June in Minnesota, there was a state representative who was gunned down alongside her husband. There was an attempted assassination of another lawmaker there in Minnesota. We know then candidate Trump, Donald Trump, escaped an assassination attempt during a rally in Pennsylvania. We hear a lot of lawmakers tonight talking about their concerns with just the climate in the country right now. We actually heard from South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace today talking about how she's calling for more security. She's supposed to have a meeting, she says, with the sergeant at arms to speak about what they can do to heighten security for lawmakers in the Capitol, because she said today she, quite frankly, had to send her staff home because they were just fearful. They felt like their lives were at risk. And so this is something that she said needed to be addressed. And that's some of the dialogue we're seeing, too, with folks who are on the other side politically, if you will, Democrats who've spoken out. We saw former President Joe Biden tweeting today, talking about how this political violence should be condemned. We just shared that commentary from California Governor Gavin Newsom, talking about how, folks should really nowadays try to foster genuine discourse, in his words, without having to resort to political violence. And he actually spoke, as we shared just a few moments ago, about honoring Charlie Kirk's memory by continuing to engage with each other as a country to be able to have these hard discussions, across political lines, spirited discourse, and be able to do it without having to escalate to violence. So I think that's probably, just based on the reactions that we've been hearing throughout the evening, some of the thoughts that many Americans are probably grappling with tonight. Maybe how did we get here? And where we can go forward as a country to make sure that we can all be neighbors with each other, regardless of what we feel or think. And so I think that's some of the questions that we're seeing tonight. So, folks, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Impact News. I know it's been a pretty long night, a pretty robust discussion, though, that we've had throughout the evening with various folks, both here in the Carolinas, where we're broadcasting from, and beyond. So we really appreciate you joining us here. Of course, more coverage to come here on our WCNC Plus platform for folks who are streaming us directly here on WCNC Plus. We also understand a lot of our sister stations across the country might have picked up on this coverage as well. So we thank you all for joining us too. And we definitely plan to bring you more throughout the evening. For folks who are watching on WCNC Plus, though, we're about to turn you over to our next hour of programming. And keep in mind, coming up at the news at 11, we'll have more updates not only on this story, but also many of the local headlines, too, that are impacting the Carolinas. Thanks so much for joining us here. I'm Vanessa Rufus.